right, we are live.
Awesome. The team knows we're live, and I think we're ready to go.
All right, cool. Let me make sure I'm set and then we will get started. Let's see, I'm not sure why I'm not big right now. I will force it to switch. Um, one more thing, I'll start. Hello, everyone joining. Just give us a second. I'll get started in less than a minute here. Last few clicks. Okay. All right. All right. Welcome back to the Think Tank Live podcast. At Think, we streamline democracy so you can vote for you. Every week, we break down what's happening in politics using our digital politics lens, up versus down, instead of just left versus right. Up means power first, down means people first. It's not left, not right, just representation. Digital politics helps all of us see the real patterns behind shutdowns, donor deals, and the stories that never get explained clearly. It's all about the concentration of power versus true representation. Think as your civic utility company. We're plugging citizens, trusted journalists, and underdog candidates into one coordination hub. So together we can use today's rules differently and start building digital democracy, which is the future home for America's politics. Our goal is for better choices, better outcomes, and one fair system where every candidate is seen and every citizen is heard. If you want to help shape what comes next, join our newsletter to get notified when the Digital Politics Hub goes live in the next couple weeks. That's where you'll be able to amplify people first efforts, plug in voices you trust, and help shape the future of politics. So before we dive in, tap the heart, jump into the chat, and hit follow so you don't miss future episodes. We're streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. So share it wherever you can. It really helps us out to spread the message. Cool. So yeah, let's plug in.
Awesome. Yeah, so welcome everybody. Travis, today I wanted to talk about money in politics, and I know we talk about that a lot, but I wanted to get deeper into it because I think it's something that a lot of people know they're angry about, but might not know the timeline or the trajectory or how we find ourselves here today. So I wanted to go into that. And something that has been recently in the news, a Democrat from Massachusetts, Seth Moulton, in October of this year, announced that he would both return and stop accepting money from APAC. So what does that kind of mean? It means that he's going to refund their money because their agenda doesn't match his agenda. But in a broader sense that I want to talk about today, it also means that the strings attached to that money, he doesn't want to abide by what that means. So today we're going to talk about money in politics. So first, uh, let's talk about the need. Why is there money in politics? What got us here? So first, I want to dive into kind of what got money into politics. So let's start talking about how money was a need for a politician, right, to get exposure. How do you reach coast to coast voters, right? You got to get newspaper ads, you got to get a billboard, you got to get a radio ad. Uh, so first, can we talk a little bit about um, before money in politics became this needed evil, it was needed. It was a course that politicians had to take in order to get their face and their message to the larger population.
Yeah. So yeah, it has been a need. It's still pretty much a need. There's been cracks in that these days. There's a handful of candidates like one or two senators, about 10 House representatives that are refusing any kind of big money, PAC money, corporate money. Um, so it's still a necessity right now. But our ultimate goal is to change that. So first, in a nutshell, it all boils down to, right now, a typical like House race, Senate race costs a couple $1 million. It ranges a little bit, but generally you need a couple $1 million to be seen. And especially for the House, they have to run every 2 years. So like practically as soon as they are sworn in, they're like immediately have to raise funds for their next campaign. Um, but it boils down to is like, why do they need millions of dollars? They need it to be seen. Like they have to spend that money so voters know that they even exist, so that they vote for them. And that's the core problem with the system, is how that works. Like, why are we doing it where every candidate is by themselves? Every candidate individually has to sell themselves to the population. We're going to talk about our solutions later on in the episode, but in short, like, what we're proposing is having one central system that showcases all the candidates, everyone that's running, and that way, each one doesn't have to fend for themselves. It's all about their merit. What do they stand for? What are their policies? What is their history? Are they trustworthy? Like, that's what should get them elected, not who raises the most money. It should be like, who's the best leader for your district. So what we're looking to do, it'll be a couple phase approach, but ultimately flipping the script, where instead of every man for themselves, every candidate for themselves, it's all put into one. We focus on one system. It'd be cheaper, more efficient, easier for the citizens, easier for the candidates. Politicians don't want to have to spend all their time dialing for dollars. It would make more sense if all their time is legislation and representation. It's either talking to you, the voter, and learning how to represent you better, or it should be directly legislating. Instead, most of their time is just dialing for dollars, and it's not for your $5, it's for the big guy's 10,000 bucks.
Yeah, exactly. And so much of that, if you're just needing to raise money, if money is the name of the game, well, gosh, whoever raises the most money kind of equates to the winner, right? Because in this current system, it's not about your ideas, your policy points, your character, right? Uh, Regardless of what side of the aisle you come from, we've all seen kind of disappointing candidates really win the race, win the election, and often that is because they have the money, right? They have the backing, they have the exposure, the clout. Uh, but on the flip side, if it's all about money, then the little guy, right? The people who don't have those connections, who don't have the right telephone numbers to call or the right invitation to a $5,000 a plate dinner, they get really left in the dust. There's just in the current system, there's no clear path of how you can be a quality candidate who does grassroots fundraising without kind of having to tap into the scumminess of big money in politics. So if we can go a bit into um, the beauty of the digital town halls and the digital exposure of what FiNC is providing and how that does lift up the quality voices and the little man.
Yeah, so like you're saying, right now, the way olden day politics, analog politics works is, TV ads, mailers, billboards, mostly just commercials. And the funny thing too, we're not going to get too deep into this direction, but the funny thing is, like, most of their ad spend is actually not even that useful. Like, these days commercials don't influence people as much as they used to, especially younger generations. Literally, we block it out cognitively when we're scrolling through our social media and whatnot. Like, we pass those ads and whatnot. So they're not even spending their money in good places, but it's just they're stuck on routine, and that's what you normally do. There's a whole thing where their consultants have their own bias, because they just want they gain a commission on how much money they spend, not like how much money they save. So they're all about spending their money, and they're just going to keep the strategies they've been doing for decades, even though the world has changed with the digital world. So that's where all those millions of dollars goes today. But yeah, so what Liz is saying, what we're starting to do immediately, and then incorporating it into digital democracy long term, is helping candidates really run a more digital political strategy. So capitalizing on social media, and then also doing virtual town halls instead of physical town halls, or in addition to at this stage. Because there's just so many better ways now to connect with American people. Like, now that we have the internet, you could talk to millions of people without spending a dime with all the new technology that exists today. So we're building relationships with grassroots candidates, the underdogs, and helping them do the virtual town halls, the virtual Q&As, different video feeds. Eventually we're gonna have them guests on our show. And it's just a cheaper, more efficient, more accessible way to engage with America. And so that is part of what our strategy is, to overcome the need for all that money. So today, with what we're doing now, and our coordination hub is around doing town halls, and using today's social media, today's digital platforms, to amplify these voices. And then the long term is digital democracy, is to build a one official system platform for all candidates. So that's the end game. But even right now, we're already digitizing and amplifying their digital voices to give them better reach.
Yeah. So really cool, new uses of kind of, traditional ways of debate and campaign, but into bringing it into the digital world. But something so unique about FiNC is we're more than a tech company, right? We're more than just building the tech platform to get candidates exposed. We're also bringing a new lens, a new political lens to the arena, right? Travis talked about it in the beginning. It's not about simply being left or being right, because that doesn't provide real value of what people are actually representing, right? That's just that kind of a easy way to just have an enemy, it seems, right? Not really value who should get your vote sometimes, but providing the up-down lens, right? Again, up-serving candidates serve power, their donors, big money, and down-serving candidates serve the people. They they talk to you, they go to town hall meetings, they care about why you voted for them. So Travis, before we move on to the next section, um, yeah, let's just talk a little bit about how it's more than just providing this digital opportunity for candidates and organizations to connect with people. It's also providing language and a mind shift change to addressing politicians. And actually, that goes back to representation of what politicians should be doing. Uh, it's about finding candidates who actually represent you, that goes beyond the simple, what color they represent or what letter is next to their name. So if we could dive a little deeper into what the up-down lens also provides.
Yeah, sure. So, even like what you said at the beginning of the episode about Seth Bolton. So, I'm not saying he's not getting rid of all his big donors, but he specifically knew that in order to adjust his stance on policies, he had to adjust who funds his campaign. And so, but he
Yeah.
only did, he just did it with APAC, but like, him and all the others, they have like tens, hundreds of big donors. And they're not, it just shows like it makes it so obvious. So obviously he like basically can't change his policy stance unless he refunded that money and no longer took their money, because there's strings to it. One, like, what they pretend to say is, oh, they're just donating out of the goodness of their heart, no strings attached, no, we don't make deals with each other. No, that's not true. There are always strings, and like, it's behind closed doors, and it's not where the public can see it. But yeah, there's no way an industry is going to give somebody tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars with no strings attached. I'm sorry, it just does not happen. And but so, with him and APAC, that just, it just shows that like all these candidates, they are beholden to a lot of big organizations, industries, donors, and it shapes all their policies. And like, so that's what we're trying to really help America understand, is like, it's all about follow the money. Everything boils down to who's funding these guys' campaigns. So, yes, there's a difference between left versus right in policy stances, but ultimately both sides are on the side of the big donors. Both sides are on those at the highest level, the richest, those with the highest concentration of power are keeping in power, staying in power, going to keep their profits. So whether you have a Democrat or Republican majority, neither side can work for you as an average citizen. It's always going to be the wealthy and those that give them the most money. And the only time you get what you want is if it's aligned with what the rich want, and and that concentration. So again, that's all up politics that we're talking about. And so we want to both help people self-identify who's down serving versus up serving. And then also we're building the tools to streamline that, make it simpler. So when the Digital Politics Hub court launches in a couple weeks, that'll give you a lot of trusted resources to find this kind of information. And then eventually when Digital Democracy launches, it'll have it all streamlined immediately right in front of you. So that's a little bit further down the line. But so down serving candidates, it works flawlessly of they, by not taking big donors, corporate money, they have to take, they're just taking $5, $10 from average Americans, and therefore they're beholden to average Americans. They're beholden to the people they are meant to be beholden to, the voters. And eventually I would like to see that you wouldn't even need that money, but at this stage you have to have something. And so there's a small portion of candidates that are just taking small dollar donations. And surprise, surprise, if you look at their districts, they have the highest approval ratings in the country based on their districts, are very happy with these candidates. So, a lot of them tend to be more left leaning, but there's also a couple that are right leaning. Same thing, very high approval ratings in their district. They want to actually get shit done for the American people, not for the big donors. And so they're more honest, they're trustworthy. They don't have to say, oh, if I say the truth in this interview, my big donors are going to come knocking at my door and being pissed at me for what I'm saying to them. Things like that literally happen. They have to worry about these things. It's not even just, oh, they're not going to give me more money. There's they'll campaign against me, and there's probably even a lot of really shady threats that do happen sometimes as well. So those that don't have the big donors can say whatever they want. They could truly answer to the American people, because not only you're both their voters, and you're the ones funding their campaign. Where the upserving candidates, they need your vote, but they basically can buy your vote. Long as they spend enough money, they're going to get your vote. You're a Democrat or you're a Republican, you're going to vote D down the line anyway. I don't care about you. You're going to vote D. You're not going to switch sides. So I just have to appease my big donors and make sure they're giving me money, and then I don't really have to care about you so much. I have to pretend to care like all politicians do, but I don't have to fulfill my promises. But the down serving candidates, they do have to answer to the to the voters, because those are who funds their campaign. So the incentive aligns with what should be, being democratic.
Yeah, and to wrap up this section, the up-down lens and the digital politics hub that we're building, it's all about, you want your politician to want to listen to you, to almost, I don't want to say be afraid, but to fear losing your support. Because like Travis said, your $5 isn't just a drop in the bucket because they have this huge war chest, right? They need your $5, and they want to keep getting your $5, and they want to get your vote. So it's this multifaceted relationship almost that you're building with the politician, rather than the relationship being built between politician and donor. So it's really, like Travis said, it's about incentive. But I want the politician I vote for to constantly almost, think about my district, think about what we want, and then, fulfill their promises. So let me reset the room. And now that we talked about kind of the history of money in politics, we're going to talk about more about what that means today and why that needs to change. So, welcome if you're viewing us on YouTube, Facebook, or TikTok. This is Think Tank Live, and we are using the digital politics lens, right? That up and down lens, not left and right only, to unpack what's actually happening in politics today. So FiNC is your civic utility, and we are plugging citizens and trusted voices into one hub to start building digital democracy, which will be the future home of America's politics. And to get involved, go to our website, futureis.org, sign up for our newsletter, so you will get alerts and you won't miss out on when our digital politics hub launches, that will help build what comes next. So this next section, Travis, is how, money in politics, you used to literally have to purchase exposure, but now big money, millions and millions, and probably billions and billions, is just kind of the norm. And if if politician A has raised $5 million, well, gosh, I better raise $5,000,001 just to make sure I have a shot at getting elected. So to really start this section off, Travis, I want to ask you, how does money, what does this money race do to a leader's ability to listen? And I know we talk about that kind of on the surface, but let's actually think about that, right? These are civic servants. We provide them the power to shape our whatever town, county, state, nation. And a lot of times, if you're the president, the world, right? So it's this all-encompassing power that we provide these people, but money often allows politicians to plug their ears to the will of the people. So if we could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say it's always money. Always is what's
Yeah.
controlling everything. At least most of the like 80-90% of the time, 95% of the time. Um, but yeah, I mean everything. Like I'm trying to think of how to talk about the APAC situation. Like we're us that think we want to be neutral on all policies, so I don't want to come off as like any kind of stance. But I guess I would say so APAC, for those that don't know, is it's like a pro-Israel super PAC. They raise millions and millions of dollars and give it to politicians to basically to be more pro-Israel, not just in the current situation, but ongoingly. They've been around for a long time. So whether it's right or wrong of like what side you agree with and all that stuff is beside the point, but the fact that they have so much money giving to these politicians, that shapes their decision making. They're going to vote on towards one side purely because that's the funding source. And when you have leaders, they should be looking at things as objectively as possible. And we're all human. We're never going to be 100% objective, but we can try to strive for objectivity. So if you're getting millions of dollars for one side, you can't, like, whether you're conscious or not, you're going to be for that side. So Israel has a lot more money than like the Palestinians, so only one side has like this massive lobbying system, and they could have all this influence. And again, I'm not saying whether they're ultimately right or wrong on the stance itself, but it just, the money aspect of it shouldn't be making the decision. It should be what is right, what is wrong, what is good for America, good for our citizens. Like, that's how they should be making these decisions. So this is one specific example, but like, again, like, all these politicians, they take money, big oil, big tech, big pharma, the big agriculture, all these industries are giving money to all these candidates. I mean, look at, farmers, the private farms are going extinct now because the same thing, there's no protections for the private farms. And, there's like, what is it, Monsanto and if I'm saying that right,
Mm-hmm.
like this only like a small handful of organizations that like own like most of the farming now. And it's because they can legally bribe our politicians to make decisions in their favor. So you know part of playing politics in this era is like it's more than, oh, what are my voters going to think. The number one issue is, what are my big donors going to think, before the voters are more like casualties, and like it's really about, am I going to still raise as much money as I can if I make this decision. And then, so first it's the big donors, then second, like, yeah, they're going to think about the voters secondly, but they're going to be like, well, how many voters would I lose? I'm going to ensure I get this money from these people, but can I afford to lose X amount of voters? Probably. So it shapes every decision that happens in politics. And again, like, that is not democracy. That is not a representative republic. That is not what we signed up for. It's not what the forefathers signed up for. They wanted leadership to represent the people, and that is not happening right now.
Yeah, and I think for me, the super insidious part of it is, let's say, you know, the money is needed, right, for the exposure. So saying no to these big donors isn't just saying, no, thank you, I'll find another donor source. It, like Travis said in the previous segments, that big donor, if you say no to them, right, then you're uncooperative, you're enemy to that big donor, and they will actually provide money and support and whatever to your opponents or to certain media that won't have you on, right? It's a very um it's a stage. It's a circus. It's nonsense. Um, so yeah, so it's bigger than just saying no, thank you, big business, big tech, big whatever. I want to be a quality politician. No, thank you. You're actually almost betting against yourself by saying no to big money. I hope that's fair to say, because it's more than just not getting the money they would have provided. It's losing that money that then goes to your opponent, right? And I think I'm repeating myself now, but yeah, can we talk a little bit about the almost cyclical nature? That money is going to go somewhere, either it goes to you or it goes to your opponent.
Yeah. Well, to your point, to broaden it, like, it's not even just the money. Like, you just touched on, it's the media. The media has
Right.
such power on what Americans see as reality. Like, and there's right now there's 6 companies that own 90% of TV media. Granted, we now have online media and other sources too now, but it's still it's a very small handful that are controlling these narratives, controlling what you see as truth. Um, so it's not even just the big donor. If the big donor's mad, not only can they take your money away and then give it to your opponent, but like Liz touched on, they can actually pull strings and move media against you and move, like, so they have just so much power. It's not even just their direct money. They have all their tentacles in so many different things. These massive corporations own like hundreds of different sub companies. You don't know,
Mm-hmm.
like, now Fox Entertainment is Disney, and like ABC is Disney, and like you think you see a bunch of companies when you're really only looking at one or two companies. So not only do they own like tons of different organizations, but then they also have tentacles in the things that they don't own, because obviously they're going to probably be a customer of like everyone, and like, in some form or the other, they have just massive influence. And so there's so much riding on, if you turn against the establishment and the concentration of power. They have a lot of power and influence to go against you. And so it's a really hard battle to play. And luckily there's some people that are going against it, but even them, like, it's still so hard. What if you're like, for example, there's about 10 people in the house that don't take super PAC money and things like that. But so that's 10 out of 538, or 430, I get the mix up. 538 is Senate plus House, so it's like 438 or something, of the House. So 10 people out of 500 some. um So, they're up against the whole world. I mean, I can't speak directly entirely, but like Marjorie Taylor Greene, she started seeing things as up versus down and started going against the Republican establishment. But then unfortunately she's resigning because she doesn't want to take, like, your own allies in your own party are against you. So, like, so she decided to jump out. But luckily there are candidates that do the struggle, but it's hard. Like, some of them are Democrats, a couple independent, and like, like they're all going to caucus with the Republicans or Democrats. And so, their allies that they're supposed to caucus with are also their enemy as soon as you turn against the establishment, because everyone is attached to like the whole monster of the same system. Even Democrats and Republicans in some way are more aligned than like a non-establishment Democrat and non-establishment Republican.
Mm-hmm.
The establishment candidates are they'll hands down, without hesitating, Democrats and Republicans, as much as they seem to hate each other, the establishment people will hold hands when it's against an anti-establishment candidate. Like, agree or disagree with like Mundani's policies, for example. When he was running in his election, the Democrats and Republicans, really, like, the establishment people, actually worked together to try to go against him for the first time. Como was running as an independent, but Democrat establishment and Republican establishment was actually kind of leaning towards Como. So the establishment stays together when they're being threatened with something that's pro people and like anti-establishment. So there's like all these different battles, all these things that are going on. Average citizens don't need to know all the ins and outs, just to know that it's real, it's deep, it's serious, and it's getting worse. And the good thing is, like, we're simplifying it by saying it's up versus down, and that is a generalized way to look at things. And then we're making it easier to understand as we build our mission forward. The coordination hub and then digital democracy will make this more apparent. It'll force more transparency. You'll with digital democracy, one day you'll be able to put your zip code in, show all your candidates, who's funding their campaign, where's that money coming from, are they consistent with their promises, like really bring accountability into the system, because we've lost all accountability in our leaders. So it's a huge battle, and kind of our mission is to kind of simplify it and streamline it for the general public. So you don't have to use it as like your full-time job. But that's our full-time job, not yours.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we get into the final segment, which we'll go deeper into FiNC's broader mission, what we're building, and how you guys, as regular citizens, are really the powerhouse behind what we're building. But before we get into that, I wanted to end this segment on really verbalizing, as long as money in politics is, I guess, the currency, no pun intended, of winning politics, big donors, the concentration of power, the kind of the crooks, regardless of party, they will always win. They will always recoup that money, regardless of, if politician A denies your donation of $5 million, you'll find another politician, right? Big donors will always find someone to pull the strings. And those that kind of give into big donors will always, I shouldn't say always, usually always stay in power, regardless of the approval rating we give people, regardless of quality candidates that might run against them. So there's kind of no way for big concentration of power and big donors and the money in politics. There's no way for them to lose. They will always win at the end of the day. Who does lose? We do, because we are not being listened to. We don't have enough money to force to rival big donors. So therefore, the ear of the politician is not pointed to us little folks, right? And that's what FiNC is all about. It's like Travis said, it's about accountability, and it's about real representation. And we're building a system that not only talks about those things, but actually provides that. And I'm going to reset the room, but then we're going to go into what FiNC is building and how you guys can get um, access to it, your hands on it, and start providing interactions with us. So we are live right now on YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. And if you're watching, this is FiNC Tank Live, where we use digital politics lens, right? Up versus down, and not just left versus right. And we unpack what's really happening in politics today. FiNC is your civic utility, where we plug in citizens and trusted voices into one hub to start building digital democracy, which will be the future home of American politics. And to get involved, join the newsletter at futureis.org to get alerts and to not miss out when the Digital Politics Hub launches and where you can help shape what comes next. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of what FiNC is doing, Travis. So first, well, I guess, yeah, let's talk about how FiNC FiNC is not so outside the box that it's super foreign, super unfamiliar, super scary. We are bypassing the rigged nature of the current system and using the current system differently to get different results. Can you talk about a little bit about that, Travis? How, we're not building a brand new democracy. We're just using the current system in a way that actually shows representation.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, so what we mean by that, by using today's rules differently, is that so basically, we say this a lot. We're not going to get the wolves to lock their own cage. So for example, like congressmen that have been there for years, you're not going to convince them, for example, to put like term limits on themselves and like literally sign themselves out of a job, basically. These candidates, they're not going to do what's right when it directly hurts their own campaign, basically. And that includes like campaign finance. So if they're taking big donor money, they're not going to pass a law that cuts out donor money because that cuts their own funding. So with that in mind, though, that's why there's a lot of reforms that are trying to make this happen, and it's still important to spread awareness, let citizens know that these issues exist, but it's just not realistic to expect these things to actually happen anytime soon for like actual legislative reforms to happen. So what we're saying is, first you need to have the right candidates in office before the legislation will happen. And it's been proven that the system is getting worse. Campaign finance is getting weaker. Every election, every signature weakens this process. So it's not been moving in the right direction. And so we see that as a pattern. We're zooming out and looking at the system and how it's been progressing in a bad direction, and we want to change the patterns. Change if what we're trying to already do isn't working, let's change our strategy. So what we're doing that's so unique is that we're not looking to change legislation. That's like the long-term goal. Like that's the last phase. Like first is right now the coordination hub is this next phase, then that we're going to work our way to digital democracy. Then later, like steps later, is when you actually look at like big reform changes. But in the meantime, what'll cause the whole system to flip upside down is helping citizens look at the system differently, building this system, this alternative political system where, again, all candidates will be showcased equally. So with digital democracy, once that's created, it's basically be like you put your zip code in, you see all the candidates side by side, who's funding their campaigns, what are their broken promises versus kept promises, things like that. Make it very, very easy and quick for an average American to say, who should I vote for in this election? So you'll be able to see those different stances. And we're not pushing you towards specific stances. If you want, Medicare for all, go for it. If you want a totally private system, go for it. We're not here to say what's right and wrong on policies. We just want to prove or show you who's actually going to fight for you, and basically who's going to actually be authentic in their promises and who's not actually going to fulfill their promises. That's kind of what the up and down politics really boils down to. So, by evolving the candidate selection process, it changes everything. Right now, the way candidates are chosen is very rigged. That the establishment Democrats, the establishment Republicans, they basically know who they want to run before the primary even exists. Before we even know who our candidates are, they know who they want to win. So they shove their candidate through the primary. They make the primaries very quiet. It's not very engaging. They don't embrace participation. They want to push their establishment candidates through, without caring what the voters want. And so by the general election, you're already voting for the lesser of two evils, because the establishment Democrats made their choice and the establishment Republicans made their choice. So now you get to vote between two evils, and that's called democracy. So flipping the script, we don't want to rely on those already in power to decide how to set up the system for you to vote for. It's like those that are already in power are giving you, hey, these are your two choices. It's like, well, they shouldn't be the ones choosing. They're already in power, and like we need people that are on the outside to like help that. The citizens should be influencing citizens. So with digital democracy and even the coordination hub, the idea is leveling the playing field, letting all candidates be seen, give more power to citizens to shape the future of politics, and then instill more accountability in the government when they don't fulfill their promises. And so long story short, we're going to change the system not by legislative changes, but by giving you the right tools for accountability and transparency, having a better candidate selection process where, like, maybe at first there's 30 candidates in a race, but then, they'll go through like contests and polling and different ways to narrow down, like, all right, America doesn't want these five. You can kind of push them aside and, narrow it down. Then by the general election, you'll know who is the most electable candidate that most America truly wants, without the influence of big media, party gatekeepers, or corporate influence. Let the American people influence the American people, and not the 1% and like the concentration of power.
Yeah, and something um, that really I like to talk about, especially with people on the other side of the aisle, for myself. It doesn't quite matter today if I have a different stance on, healthcare or immigration or, these kind of really divisive topics, because those different points of view are not being talked about in the halls of Congress. Those different sides are not what is actually being discussed uh, in Congress, because of the big weight that billionaires and big donors and big tech and all that, big media has. If better quality candidates, left, right, center, independent, everyone, if all opportunities were given for quality candidates to actually listen to the people to be elected into the halls of Congress, it would actually give our different opinions a chance to be aired out in the halls of Congress. I keep saying that, but it doesn't matter right now that your neighbor votes differently than you, because neither one of you is being represented when it comes down to it. It is either us little people, even though there's millions of us, versus the concentration of power, versus the big donors. So if first we get better quality candidates that are actually representative, actually willing to listen to you, actually willing to bring up the issues that you put them in power to do, that begins democracy, right? It's taking out the way too weighty opinion or favor that money and just the rigged nature brings, and it allows difference of opinions to actually blossom in the halls of Congress. And sorry if I'm rambling a bit on that. I just think it's so necessary to talk about that. Differing opinions are beneficial to the rigged system because it keeps us fighting each other. But it doesn't matter how long we fight each other, because the real enemy to us all is the rigged system.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, Yeah, so I kind of want to summarize the kind of what we just talked about in this segment. So a lot of how we're going to change the system is, we're not fighting the old system head on. We're bypassing the current system. So, in today's system, your candidate has to raise millions of dollars, billboards, ads, commercials, all this jazz, in order to get in front of you. We're bypassing that. We don't have to take that on directly. What we're doing is building a platform that's by the people, for the people, where all the candidates are going to be showcased equally. And so all that other stuff, you could call it noise. Like, it's not going to happen overnight, but as more people understand what we're doing and what they're doing, they're going to realize that what we're doing is better, is has your interest in mind, unlike theirs. So the more that Americans subscribe to seeing it this new way, and paying more attention to first the coordination hub and then digital democracy, that immediately starts completely changing the influence, so that you're looking at the underdogs, the grassroots candidates. You'll see their true viability and electability, not just what the establishment says is electable. See what you want as better choices for yourself. So that's one. And then, like, the digital politics hub in general is going to coordinate the entire ecosystem. That's a huge milestone for us. I started this organization about 3 years ago, and we're finally going from phase 1 to phase 2 of, like, launching the coordination hub, all these new tools to empower you, allow you to start having a two-way relationship with us, where you could provide feedback, help us decide, what should digital democracy look like. There's certain ethical questions that we need to go through. There's certain features that some people might want to add to it. And then just not even just the tech itself, but then, like, how we see politics in the future. Should we be moving towards a multiple party system, a no party system, stick with the two, but have different, like, wings? There's different scenarios. We want to know what most America would want, and then work towards making it more of a reality. So the digital politics hub, the coordination hub, will help coordinate that, and really start lining everyone up. We all have this common goal of true citizen representation, and a more direct democracy. And then where we start differing, we have a process for that. We're going to have clusters where people can align based on where they stand on specific policy issues, and there's a whole system that makes it more manageable, more understandable, less overwhelming to participate in democracy without being a political expert and without the division. So that happens right away with the digital politics hub. Again, it should be launching at latest the first week of the new year. And then and what it all boils down to is, when the people, instead of the big donors, decide what's viable, everything changes. That literally the whole system will change from the bottom up. If the American people are truly choosing their own interests, and not being manipulated into lesser of two evils, everything changes. Even just imagine, like, if you're a Democrat, imagine we're just you're getting better Democrats, Republicans are getting better Republicans, maybe third parties start springing in. But even if it's just the two parties, better Democrats, better Republicans, even if your party loses in a certain scenario, it would feel better knowing that at least they have better candidates on the other side. So it's not, the stakes aren't as dire as it feels right now. Everything feels like life or death, and, like, the world ending if the other side's going to win this next election. That all goes down if both sides actually care about your interests. So you're like, oh, well, the other party won this time, and I don't agree with their strategy, but you know what? They want us to have affordable health care. They want us to have higher salaries. They want us to, not be homeless. And so, you might not agree on their strategy on how to get there, but at least their motivation is pure. Right now, you feel that the other side, their motivation is not pure, and it's not. And the problem is, though, is both sides are not pure. Not the bulk of it. Only the ones that don't take the big donor money. And there's it's not super black and white. Humans never are, but everyone has a certain level of conflicts of interest based on, like, the money and the type of power that influences them. But so by building one shared system, one stage for candidates, and it's also going to empower independent journalists, bring back journalism. All these different things just will completely change the system around. So, this is the solution. There's not really many solutions floating in the world right now. This is it. And again, the benefit is that it doesn't go against whatever you believe as in politics. You're a Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Socialist, anarchist. All of it fits into what we're doing. We just want you to be represented regardless of your political beliefs. The only ones that don't fit in is those that literally don't want a democracy, and they like, only being able to buy politicians to get what you want. Those are the only ones that wouldn't agree with what we're all about. But yeah, so that kind of summarizes both our mission and what we're building. And then and so a big motion forward now come the next couple weeks into January with the coordination hub, and really start having you guys be integrated into this movement of movements, and really start empowering you to have a louder voice, more influence. You should be influencing politics, not the big donors.
Absolutely. And on that note, just a friendly reminder to everyone that going to our website, futureis.org, signing up for the newsletter, that is how you ensure that you don't miss out when the coordination hub drops, right? And like Travis said, what FiNC is building, the opportunity that FiNC is providing for democracy to have breathing room again, right? Democracy right before our eyes every single day is crumbling, whether it's a Democrat in office, whether it's a Republican in office. And we're saying, gosh, if those in power aren't going to save us, we got to save ourselves. So check out our website, check out our social media. Our handle is futureis.org across all social media. Gosh, what do you have to lose? FiNC has a plan, FiNC has a solution, and we want you to be a part of it. So again, that is futureis.org for our social media and futureis.org for our website. Well, thank you guys for tuning in this week. We'll be back next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 Pacific. We're so excited to keep talking with you guys. And as we keep building internally and getting, putting our shoulder to the wheel and getting that coordination hub out, we're just real excited to provide that to you guys and start, like Travis said, having that two-way street where with FiNC and with the public, we could start building the system that really rivals the trash one we have today. So on that, guys, thank you again for tuning in. Leave us a like, follow us, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Yeah, take care. We'll see you, next week.